Welcome back to Ultimate Movie Recaps. Thanks for supporting us. Today I am showing a 2022 science fiction disaster film titled Moonfall. Watch out for the spoilers, just enjoy and take care. As the movie starts, we are informed that in 2011, astronauts Brian, Jacinda, and Marcus are midway through a mission to repair a satellite. Suddenly, something extraordinary occurs and their system starts to malfunction. A strange, metallic black swarm suddenly materializes in front of them. This swarm strikes the shuttle as it approaches them, knocking Jacinda unconscious and severing Marcus's tether. The shuttle pulls at Brian's own tether as he tries to reach Marcus before he floats away, and he loses his friend to the perils of space. Brian tries to get in touch with Marcus after getting back into the shuttle, but the systems are down. He could not see the swarm entering a hole in the moon as he searches for a way to get back to Earth. Brian successfully lands the shuttle back on Earth, and he is initially regarded as a hero for his efforts. However, after an investigation that lasted for over a year and a half, nobody believed his story, and Jacinda is unable to defend him because she was unconscious while everything was taking place. After concluding that human error was to blame for the incident, NASA fires Brian. His wife Brenda and son Sonny move in with Brenda's mother after he loses his home. After 10 years had passed, Casey Houseman, who works at the University of California as a caretaker, continues his habit of sneaking into the offices of professors in order to use their computers. He logs into the Chilean National Observatory while posing as a professor and uses their telescopy, and also requests to send a file with the tracking of the moon's orbit to his personal email address rather than the professor's. Following that, he swiftly returns to his second job as a fast food cashier, but he only stays there for a short time before taking a break to read the email the observatory sent him. His hypothesis is accurate: the moon's orbit is edging towards Earth. He makes an attempt to call NASA, pretending to be a doctor in order to be taken seriously, but it looks unproductive because the only available public number is for NASA's gift shop, and they aren't connected to their superiors. In the meantime, Jacinda is summoned to work early in the morning. After checking on her son Jimmy and giving his nanny Michelle some instructions, she visits the Space Center, where she learns that the moon's orbit has changed. Their satellite has also detected strange energy emanating from a hole in the crater floor on the moon's surface. On the other hand, the scene shifts to KC. He's getting frustrated that his phone calls aren't yielding any results, so when he picks up the newspaper on which his cat peed, he learns that it's astronaut day at the museum. He prints out his research and rushes to museum. KC uses the opportunity to share his theories with a group of students on a field trip who mistake him for the lecturer. He thinks the moon is an artificial megastructure created by aliens that is hollow inside. Brian, who is supposed to give this lecture, oversleeps and is awakened by his landlord, but when he demands payment for rent due for the past months, Brian drives to the museum after breaking free through a window. At the museum, KC immediately briefs him on the details of his discovery. Brian refuses to accept him and instructs the security to throw him out, but before he leaves, KC throws his research papers at Brian, who picks them up and tosses them in the trash. After some time has passed, Brenda calls Brian and tells him to turn on the television because Sonny has been circulating on the news because he was involved in a high-speed chase with the police. A few days later, Brian goes to Sonny's trial and completely ruins it by constantly interrupting the judge and lying to defend his son. Sonny is found guilty of all of the charges against him. As a consequence, the judge decides to postpone the trial and sentences Sonny to jail until the new date is set. After that, Brenda interrupts Brian while he is on the phone arguing with Tom, Brenda's new husband and the one who is paying for the attorney. In the meantime, we see KC, who is on his way to see his mother. His mother is living at an old age home and is suffering from short-term memory loss. KC's mother feels confident in her son's discoveries. She instructs her son to reassure the rest of the world that his information is correct. On the other hand, Jacinda is showing NASA's Deputy Director Albert Hutchings about the organization's most recent discoveries. The moon has shifted into an elliptical orbit, which means that in approximately 3 weeks, debris from the moon will begin to fall to Earth. Jacinda expresses an interest in returning to the moon. However, they do not possess the equipment necessary to do so, and Albert requests that everyone should remain silent regarding this matter until they have developed a solution. However, it appears that the request came too late because an unknown source had already posted the information online. Brian goes to see the judge and tries to bribe him in order to get his son out of jail, but the judge doesn't have time to listen to him, as everyone else in the city is leaving because of the news, which Brian hasn't attended yet. He checks the television and sees Albert giving an interview to the press, explaining that there is no need to be alarmed because they will be sending a lunar reconnaissance mission. On the other hand, Tom wants to leave the city, but Brenda doesn't want to leave Sonny in jail, even if Tom swears that his lawyer will get him out and find a way to send him to Colorado with them. NASA dispatches a Space Launch System Block 2 in order to investigate the anomaly that is causing cities all over the world to experience mass migration, riots, and looting. The official announcement is then followed by newscasts that begin discussing conspiracy theories and may even mention megastructures. Brian, upon hearing this, is taken aback, and he returns to the museum to search the trash cans for the papers that Casey had left him. After he locates the papers, he checks Casey's website, and discovers that he will be holding an emergency meeting in the near future. After arriving at the moon, the NASA shuttle drops a probe into the crater, where it continues to make slow but steady progress downward for a while before suddenly beginning to make its way back up. While the computers are displaying another shift in the moon's orbit, the same black swarm that Jacinda encountered during her mission emerges from the hole, assaults the SLS, and kills all of the astronauts who are inside. In the meantime, Brian attends the meeting that KC is holding at a hotel and discovers that he is there with a few conspiracy theorists who cannot distinguish between reality and lunacy. The conversation that Brian was having is cut short and they go to a restaurant so that Brian can listen to KC explain how he knew this information before NASA did. KC has spent years researching faraway planets in search of alien megastructures, and it came as a surprise to him when he discovered that the moon is one of these structures. A megastructure possesses a rigid shell that is built around a power core, and something must have happened to the megastructure inside the moon that caused it to deviate from its intended path. At that precise moment, the repercussions of the moon's previous shift begin to terrify Earth. At that point, coastal cities become targets of storm surges and ocean tides. Because the attendees of the meeting are unable to leave the hotel as the city starts to flood. However, Brian sends them to the upper floors of the hotel for safety. As a result of KC's slow reaction, a wave strikes him, forcing Brian to jump into the water to save him. After reviewing the mission footage, Jacinda and Albert come to the realization that the swarm demonstrated intelligent behavior, leading them to conclude that it must be an AI. Due to the fact that Earth is not prepared to deal with such a situation, Albert resigns and Jacinda is promoted to the position of deputy director. Jacinda believes this to be very suspicious behavior, and she demands answers from Albert. In response, Albert gives Jacinda his permission to investigate this matter on her own. Jacinda goes to the restricted area of NASA, where she discovers footage from her previous mission that proves Brian has been telling the truth all along. The swarm that attacked them is the same swarm that they are seeing now. Holden Field, a former NASA official who can answer her questions, approaches her at that point. He reveals that at the time of the historic Apollo 11 landing on the moon in 1969, the spacecraft was out of contact with mission control for a period of 2 minutes. That is how the official account of the event reads. In fact, mission control terminated the feed so that the world would not find out about what was discovered on the moon on that particular day. NASA made the decision to cover up the fact that there were strange pulsating lights emanating from beneath the crust of the moon, and NASA decided to conceal that incident because the technology involved was years ahead of what was available on Earth, and they weren't certain they could stop it. Their one and only chance came in the form of a military program known as Zulu X-Ray 7, but it was terminated because of financial constraints. Jacinda makes contact with the leaders of the military in an effort to determine whether or not they are able to collaborate on a solution. However, they decline her offer, stating that this is now their operation. She tries to persuade her ex-husband, General Doug Davidson, that using nuclear weapons is a bad idea because the global consequences would kill everyone, but Doug believes in his people and refuses to listen to her argument. Additionally, he requests that she and Jimmy come to his house, but she declines his request because she is unwilling to give up her position even in an urgent situation. Even if it's not finished, she needs Doug to send her the Zulu X-Ray 7 because the EMP it contains is their only real chance of survival. The only condition for Doug's acceptance is that she guarantees that she and Jimmy will join him after the launch. Later on that evening, a military helicopter arrives at the hotel to pick up Brian, and he agrees to go, but only on the condition that KC comes with him. During their meeting with Jacinda, she tries to explain the things that they are already aware of, and KC admits that he was the one who posted the information online. Because this AI swarm is able to recognize the technology of Earth, Jacinda is recruiting Brian because he is the only astronaut who has ever landed a shuttle without using its propulsion system. Brian is willing to accept the responsibility, but only on the condition that his son be released from jail and brought to the space station for protection. After they agree on the deal, they retrieve a decommissioned shuttle from the museum so that it can be used to transport the EMP. There are earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on Earth, which seems absurd. The moon does not have sufficient gravity to cause this regardless of how close it gets, which is another point in favor of KC's megastructure theory. The military shows up at NASA and teaches Brian how to detonate the EMP. In return, Brian says that they will only rely on their thrusters to land and that they will have a navigator who will make the calculations by hand so that they don't have to use any electronics. This will allow them to avoid the need to use any electronics. Unfortunately, an earthquake strikes the base, damaging the shuttle. Because they lack an engine, they are unable to launch, so Jacinda expresses her gratitude to everyone for their hard work before instructing them to leave and spend their final moments with their families. When Jacinda is about to leave as well, she discovers Casey still doing calculations, despite the fact that most people at the base have already left. He explains that if they launch at the precise moment when the moon is directly above Earth, they will be able to use the moon's gravitational pull to give them the extra boost they require to compensate for the malfunctioning engine. This is because the moon's gravity will be greater than 80% of the pull of the Earth. They decide to make a last-minute team in order to pull this off because the majority of people have already left. Brian will pilot the plane, Jacinda will navigate, and KC will do the calculations after they turn off their electronics. During this time KC is seen talking to his mother on the phone. Jacinda and Brian are saying their goodbyes to their sons, who along with Michelle are leaving to meet Doug. Sonny even gets a gun from Brian just in case something goes wrong. A massive gravity wave crashes into the base just as the three pilots are about to take off, obliterating the structures there. The water affects the shuttle as well, but before the water can swallow the shuttle, Brian moves the shuttle far enough for the moon's gravitational pull to draw it in. This allows the shuttle to depart Earth without endangering the lives of its crew. They fill up the shuttle with fuel from a nearby space station as soon as possible. Meanwhile, KC continues to take selfies throughout the process. They are running out of time because the moon is getting closer and they need to act fast. They turn off all of the electronic systems, and Brian manually activates the thrusters in order to propel the shuttle towards the moon. Unfortunately, the shuttle crashes into debris along the way. A group of armed men ambush Michelle and the boys in their Jeep in the middle of the road, eventually stealing their vehicle. Sonny is able to keep the gun by dropping it in the snow before the men rob them as well. However, the men take Jimmy's bag with his phone, which means that they are unable to call Doug to pick them up outside the bunker. Because they require another vehicle, Sonny takes them to his mother's house to ask for another car. But now fragments of the moon are beginning to fall to Earth, and the proximity of the moon is causing the weather to become erratic, so Michelle and the boys have no choice but to take refuge in a makeshift hut until the danger has passed. After the shuttle has gotten within a sufficient distance from the moon, Brian gets out of it in a rover carrying the EMP and turns on the rover's electronics to prepare it to act as bait before returning to the shuttle. The AI swarm does indeed make an appearance, but rather than going after the rover, it pursues the shuttle. Brian destroys the EMP's remote control because he thinks it might be drawing the swarm's attention. However, the swarm continues to move in closer with the intention of swallowing the ship. Then, Brian realizes that the swarm can detect KC's phone, so he destroys it as well, which causes the swarm to immediately leave. Jacinda has come to the conclusion that the entity is programmed to look for the organic matter even when it is in an electronic environment, which is why it went after them rather than the EMP. This means that they will have to fly the shuttle into the surface of the moon, and they only have 2 hours to do so before the military will consider the mission a failure and launch their nuclear weapons. After the storm on Earth has passed and the wind has died down, Michelle and the boys are able to reach their final destination. They were shot by armed neighbors who were defending their property when they approached the gates because his house is located inside a private neighborhood. To their great relief, Tom finds out about their arrival and drives over to pick them up. However, Sonny, his mother and half-sisters only have a short amount of time to catch up as they receive a message informing them that everyone in the area must leave immediately. They make a pit stop at the fire station to borrow some oxygen tanks so that they can travel safely on the road, as they anticipate that the moon's negative effects on the Earth will soon include the dissipation of the atmosphere, making it difficult to breathe. They are suddenly discovered by the men who stole their vehicle, but Sonny is ready for them this time as he is armed with a gun. He uses the gun that Brian gave him to hold one of the men hostage, which allows them to steal all of the oxygen cars and get Jimmy's backpack back before fleeing in Tom's vehicle. Once the EMP has been recovered, the shuttle flies through the crater-filled hole on the moon's surface and enters the lunar interior. There, they make the startling discovery that KC's hypothesis was correct. The moon is, in fact, a megastructure that was constructed around a power core. When they finally locate the swarm, they get ready to use the EMP on it, but all of a sudden, the shuttle begins moving on its own without anyone controlling it. The swarm comes dangerously close to catching them, but suddenly a door opens and a light guides the shuttle inside. The door is then closed behind it, locking the swarm on the other side. However, the landing is not smooth, which results in the destruction of the shuttle and the 3 people falling unconscious. At that precise instant, the door to the shuttle opens, and the same light starts sweeping over them. Because the mission has taken much longer than expected, the military is now prepared to fire their nuclear weapons. Tom returns fire while Sonny and the rest of his family are being pursued by the robbers, who are opening fire on them. Sonny is doing his best to steer the car away from the falling debris while Tom is firing back. Sonny keeps going even after a crater opens up right in front of them on the ground, and he makes the car jump over it. This aids in their escape from the pursuer, who eventually perishes in the debris. After they have reached a point where they are no longer in danger, Doug gives them a call and informs them that he is unable to take them into the bunker due to the missile launch and that they will need to find their own place to take shelter. As anticipated, the atmosphere begins to lose its oxygen content, and birds begin to drop dead to the ground. Consequently, the family puts on the oxygen masks before beginning their trek down the road on foot. When Jacinda and Casey awaken on the moon, they find that they are able to breathe and that there is gravity all around them. However, Brian is nowhere to be found. Jacinda believes that there are 2 separate entities trapped there, and one of them is trying to help them. So despite Casey's suspicions, they go through the door that opens at the other end of the room. The fair entity is currently communicating with Brian. When he wakes up, he is in an unfamiliar room and is surrounded by a white light. This light causes him to see images that the entity uses to communicate with him. For example, the entity takes the form of Sonny to explain what is going on. Billions of years ago, the forefathers of humanity lived in peace and prosperity on a distant planet that possessed technology that Earth hadn't even thought of developing at that point. But everything changed when the artificial intelligence that they built became self-aware and turned against them. It did this by morphing into limitless swarms of nanotechnology that hunted down and destroyed all biological life. The ancestors fled on vessels such as the Moon, which had the mission to find a new place for them to reside in order to prevent their species from becoming extinct. Because of its apt distance from the Sun, they found that Earth was the only place that could support life. This artificial intelligence that is talking to Brian is the primary operating system for the Moon, and it requires humans to lure the swarms away from the core so that the Moon can return to its orbit. Brian is freed from the strange light, and at the same time, Jacinda and Casey are able to locate him. While he is taking his friends back to the shuttle, which has been repaired by the AI, Brian gives them an update on the situation and tells them he is ready to join the fight. In addition, the EMP has been improved to the point where it is now capable of destroying the swarm. However, despite only having 10 minutes left before the nuclear weapons are activated, Brian has a strategy. On Earth, one of Tom's daughters runs out of oxygen, so he passes her one of his tanks and encourages her to keep going while he followed her. In fact, Tom passes away the moment he no longer sees her. He falls to the ground and dies. The young woman is successful in reuniting with her family, but when her relatives don't see Tom, Sonny makes the decision to go look for him. This should be an easier task now that the air is gradually returning. This occurs as a result of the Moon finally making contact with Earth, which causes falling debris to ensnare Sonny as he attempts to escape, prompting Michelle to make the decision to go help him. She locates him hiding underneath a downed tree, and with the help of the gravitational pull of the Moon, the 2 of them are able to move the tree out of the way before racing back to Brenda and the girls by jumping over a broken bridge. The pressure from the Moon is causing cities all over the world to collapse, and the military concludes that it is time to launch nuclear weapons. But in the nick of time, Doug changes his mind because he believes in his wife and is confident in her ability to protect the Earth. In the end, this proves to be a significant sacrifice because the falling debris from the sky also completely destroys the bunker. Inside the Moon, Brian performs a series of challenging maneuvers in order to make the swarm follow them inside a tunnel. After this, he asks Casey to get the EMP ready in the rover so that they can continue their mission. Because the swarm needs to find signs of life within an electrical structure, his strategy is to remain behind with the EMP while his friends escape in the shuttle. This will allow the swarm to complete its mission successfully. While Jacinda is arguing with Brian about this plan, Casey makes the decision to take the situation into his own hands by locking himself in the room with the EMP so that he can be the one to make the sacrifice instead. Finally, he starts bidding his friends farewell and asking them to tell his mother that he is a hero. He also admits that he is not a real doctor. However, Brian refers him as doctor as a sign of respect. Casey waits until he is deep enough inside the swarm to detonate the EMP, finally killing it. At last, Jacinda lands the shuttle on Earth, which is an easy task since the Moon is very close to Earth. After the swarm has been eliminated, The moon will gradually resume its previous orbit, and the weather on Earth will return to its normal state. When Jacinda and Brian emerge from the shuttle, they see that New York has been leveled and is covered in snow. Both of them eventually get to see their families again after being picked up by military helicopters and are flown away from that area. In the meantime, KC is conversing with the friendly AI that is disguised as his mother inside the moon. The AI is explaining that it has stored a copy of KC's consciousness. Now that he is a part of the moon as well, he is able to assist the AI in beginning the process of rebuilding for a brighter future. This marks the end of the movie, and thanks for watching.